extend a warm welcome to all listeners. Put aside your tasks, grab something comforting, and prepare for a story that might feel all too familiar. Olivia Matthews stood by the panoramic window of her office on the 16th floor of the Mercury Business Center, watching the city slowly light up for the evening. At 32, she was already here, owner of Ohm Digital, an internet marketing agency with 50 employees, her own office, and an impressive client list. Olivia, the latest report for the Green Life Project. Marina, her executive director, placed a folder of documents on the desk. Traffic increased by 43%, conversion by 18%. The client is satisfied and asked me to convey his personal gratitude. Olivia smiled. Of course the client was satisfied. When he came to them 6 months ago, his eco-friendly online store was on the verge of collapse. Now, profits were steadily growing each month. Tell the team there will be a bonus tomorrow. And yes, send Alex an invitation to the business breakfast on Wednesday. We'll discuss long-term cooperation. Marina nodded and headed for the door, but stopped. Almost forgot. BTCom called. They want to meet. I think they're finally ready for a full contract. Olivia felt a surge of satisfaction. BTCom, a large pharmaceutical company, had been eyeing their agency for almost a year. If the contract went through, it would be a major breakthrough. When Marina left, Olivia sank into her chair and allowed herself a moment of weakness, just leaning back and closing her eyes. 6 years ago, when she founded the agency, she had only a laptop, a rented studio apartment, and a bold dream. The first office was in her one-bedroom apartment. The first employee was a former classmate, Kate, who agreed to work for a minimal wage and a promise of future prospects. The first client was a small coffee shop owned by her uncle, Peter. Now, Peter owned a chain of 5 coffee shops and a farm in rural Illinois, and Kate headed the content department, managing a team of 8 copywriters. Her phone vibrated on the desk. A message from Mark. How about dinner at Palermo? I'll pick you up at 8. Olivia smiled. Mark Campbell. Their romance had begun 3 months ago and was developing rapidly. 36 years old. An architect at a successful firm. Broad shoulders, brown eyes, and a knack for listening. They met at a business forum where Olivia was giving a presentation on digital marketing trends. Mark approached her after the talk, asked a few thoughtful questions, and then invited her for coffee. I'll be ready, she texted back. Julia, the head of the SMM department, poked her head into the office without knocking. I have good news. Remember the campaign for Altair? It's been nominated for the Golden Algorithm. The Golden Algorithm was a prestigious award in internet marketing. Being shortlisted was already an honor. Seriously, Olivia jumped up. That's fantastic. The ceremony's in a month. I think we need evening gowns. Julia beamed no less than Olivia herself. They had started together. Julia was the second employee when the agency moved from Olivia's apartment to a tiny office on the outskirts. Julia believed in the project, even during those months when there was barely enough money for rent and modest salaries. We'll throw a party if we win, Olivia promised. After Julia left, Olivia looked at the clock. Time to get ready for dinner. Before turning off her computer, she glanced at the company's economic indicators for the last quarter. 22% growth. Stable contracts. The agency was on solid footing. Palermo Restaurant greeted them with dim lighting and the sounds of a live violin. Mark was already waiting at a table in the far corner of the room. You look beautiful. He stood to greet her, kissing her hand with genuine admiration in his eyes. Over dinner, Mark was particularly attentive, asking about her work and sharing his own news. Tonight, he seemed a little tense, as if preparing for something important. I won the bid for the Cultural Center project, he announced when dessert arrived. A huge order, great prospects. Congratulations. Olivia was genuinely delighted. That's what you were talking about last time. Excellent news. Mark smiled, but it was a bit strained. Then, unexpectedly, he covered her hand with his. "Olivia, I want to ask you something." Her heart pounded. They had only been dating for 3 months, but she already knew she was truly in love. "I've never met a woman like you." His voice grew softer. "You're smart, beautiful, driven. I realized I don't want to lose another day without you." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Olivia felt a lump rise in her throat. "Will you marry me?" Mark opened the box, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. The world seemed to stop. Olivia looked at the ring, at Mark's face, and felt warmth spread through her chest. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Mark's eyes lit up with happiness. He placed the ring on her finger, then raised his glass. "To us, to our future." Olivia raised her glass, feeling a slight dizziness from the sudden joy. Everything was happening so fast, but it felt so right. The next 2 months flew by in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Olivia juggled running the agency with organizing the ceremony. Mark insisted on a lavish event. She met his parents, Mr. Robert, a quiet retired engineer, and Mrs. Susan, a former head librarian. Susan turned out to be a woman with a strong personality, authoritative, loud, with a habit of giving unsolicited advice. "You're a clever one, aren't you?" her mother-in-law said at their first meeting, sizing up Olivia. "But business is a hassle. Family and children are more important for a woman." Olivia offered a restrained smile, not wanting to start a conflict with her mother-in-law. "She'll get used to it," she thought then. At the pre-wedding dinner, where Olivia invited her parents and closest friends, Mrs. Susan immediately took the initiative. She criticized the menu, the table arrangement, the wine selection. Olivia's mother, Helen, a quiet woman who taught at a music school, smiled bewilderedly, unaccustomed to such assertiveness. "Mom's just worried everything will go perfectly," Mark whispered to her, noticing the tension. "She's always like that. Don't pay attention." Olivia nodded, deciding to be patient. After all, she was marrying Mark, not his mother. The wedding truly was like a fairy tale, a luxurious ballroom decorated with fresh flowers, a classical orchestra, exquisite dishes. Olivia chose an elegant gown from a famous designer, simple and graceful, without unnecessary frills. Mrs. Susan shook her head, too modest for such an event. But Olivia stood her ground. When Mark placed the wedding ring on her finger and kissed her in front of the guests, Olivia felt it was the beginning of something beautiful. They danced their first dance, and she caught the tender gaze of her proud father and mother. And for some reason, the tense gaze of her mother-in-law. But none of it mattered now. Only the two of them existed, Olivia and Mark, husband and wife. After the ceremony, the newlyweds flew to Hawaii. Mark chose a luxurious hotel on the coast of Maui. The first few days of their honeymoon were filled with serenity boat trips, sunbathing on the beach, romantic dinners. On the 4th day, Olivia noticed Mark frequently checking his phone and excusing himself for calls. "Has something happened?" she asked at dinner, when for the 3rd time that evening, he apologized and went out onto the terrace with his phone. "Nothing special?" He offered a strained smile. "Just Mom worrying about our return. She wants to arrange a family dinner." "But we just got married." Olivia was surprised. "We have another week of vacation ahead." "I know." He covered her hand with his. "But you understand how important family is. Mom has always been the center of our family. She's used to gathering everyone, caring for them. It's her way of showing love." Olivia nodded, though a slight unease stirred within her. How strong was his mother's influence on Mark still? She dismissed these thoughts. All families were different, and she just needed to get used to her husband's family's quirks. On the 6th day of their vacation, Mark received a message that made him frown. "Something wrong with work?" Olivia asked. "No." He paused. "My cousin, Victor, lost his job again. Mom's asking me to help him find employment." "I'm sorry to hear that," Olivia replied. "What does he do?" "He's versatile," Mark answered evasively. "He's just unlucky with employers. People don't appreciate his potential." Olivia remained silent. She had seen Victor at the wedding, a boisterous man who drank the most and told questionable jokes. Not the most pleasant impression. "Maybe you could find a place for him," Mark unexpectedly asked. "In your agency." "In my agency." Olivia looked at her husband in surprise. "Mark, I don't even know his qualifications. What's his experience in marketing?" "Well, he doesn't have direct experience," Mark admitted, "but he learns quickly, and the family needs support right now." "Let's discuss this when we get back," Olivia said gently. "Right now, we're on vacation, and I want to enjoy our time together." Mark nodded, but she noticed his mood had changed. For the rest of the day, he was pensive and uncommunicative. The last few days of their honeymoon passed less serenely than the beginning. Mark often talked to his mother on the phone, sometimes arguing in hushed tones. Olivia tried not to listen in, giving her husband space for private conversations, but her unease grew. When they returned to New York, Mark insisted on going directly to his parents' house. "Mom prepared a celebratory dinner," he explained. "She's been looking forward to our return." Olivia was tired after the flight and would have preferred to go home first and take a shower, but she didn't object. The first family dinner as a wife should go well. Mrs. Susan greeted them with open arms. The table was set like for a grand celebration, many dishes, expensive wine, beautiful tableware. Besides Mark's parents, other relatives were present. Aunt Rose, the one who sold trinkets at the market and whom Olivia had briefly seen at the wedding, Cousin Victor with his wife, and some other people Olivia didn't remember. "Finally, our family is together," Mrs. Susan proclaimed, raising her glass. "To the newlyweds." Dinner lasted a long time. Olivia politely maintained conversation, talked about their vacation, answered questions. Gradually, she noticed that the conversation kept returning to the topic of work. Mark's relatives inquired in detail about her agency, its staff, and job openings. "Victor is looking for work, by the way," Mrs. Susan remarked casually. "He's very capable, learns new things quickly." Olivia smiled politely, not making any concrete promises. When they finally returned home, it was late. Olivia felt utterly drained. "You have a wonderful family," she said, trying to be sincere. "Just very active." Mark hugged her. "They just want to be closer to us. It's family, the most important thing we have." Olivia nodded, but a vague unease stirred within her. Something told her that the honeymoon was truly over, and not just in terms of the calendar. The next day, she returned to the office, where she was met with joyful news the agency had won the golden algorithm for the Altair campaign. Julia was jumping with happiness, showing off the golden statuette. The team greeted her with applause. Olivia felt the tension of the past few days of vacation recede. Here, in her own office, among her own team, she was in her element. That evening, Mark came into her office, his face unusually serious. "We need to talk business," he said without preamble. "I think it's time to get your agency in order." Olivia froze, looking at her husband. His eyes held a determination she had only seen before when he discussed architectural projects. "Get in order," she repeated, putting down her tablet with financial reports. "What are you talking about, Mark?" He sank into the chair opposite her desk, rested his elbows on the polished surface, and clasped his fingers. "I've analyzed your company's structure," he began in a tone Olivia mentally dubbed condescending. "You're overstaffed, 50 people is too many for an agency of your level. Olivia felt a wave of indignation rising inside her, but she controlled it. A deep breath, a slow exhale. My agency is in the top 15 in the city. We have over 70 regular clients. Every employee is fully engaged in projects. She calmly listed, "What is your analysis based on?" Mark pulled neatly folded sheets from the leather briefcase Olivia had given him for his birthday. "Here's a list of employees who should be let go." He placed the papers in front of her. 12 people. They're inefficient. Olivia's eyes scanned the list, and her blood ran cold. It included the names of key specialists: Kate, head of content; Julia, head of SMM; David, lead analyst; Alex, lead programmer, and 8 more valuable employees. "Is this a joke?" she asked quietly. "These are the core of my team, the people who have been with me since the beginning." "Precisely why you're keeping them." Mark nodded. "Personal attachment hinders business. They receive high salaries, but their efficiency doesn't match the cost." "Where do you get such conclusions?" Olivia tried her best to remain calm. "You've never worked a day in marketing. You're an architect. Mark." "I know how to analyze structures." He cut her off. "It's a universal skill. And besides, I consulted with specialists." "What specialists?" "It doesn't matter." He waved his hand. "The main thing is, I have a ready-made solution. Look." He took out a second sheet. "These are the people who will replace the dismissed ones. All tested, motivated, ready to start work immediately." Olivia took the sheet and felt a lump rise in her throat. The list of candidates consisted solely of Mark's relative's Aunt Rose, who, according to Mrs. Susan, was excellent with people, for the position of HR director; cousin Victor, who had been unemployed for 3 years; as project manager, niece Amy, recently expelled from college for truancy; as SMMM manager; and 9 more people, from her mother-in-law's old school friend to a distant relative recently released from prison. "This is absurd." Olivia slammed the list onto the table. "What qualifications does Aunt Rose have in human resources management? What does Victor know about project management? Amy didn't even finish college, and you're suggesting entrusting her with client accounts? They'll learn quickly." Mark looked at her with slight irritation. "Not everyone had the opportunity to get a prestigious education like you, but they're hard-working, honest people. Family is reliable." "Business is not a family affair," Olivia said firmly. "I cannot and will not fire professionals to employ your relatives." Mark frowned. "Now they're your relatives too, or don't you consider yourself part of our family?" Olivia felt her insides clench. The manipulation was so obvious it wasn't even offensive, just infuriating. "Marriage doesn't give you the right to interfere in my business." She tried to speak firmly but calmly. "I built this company for 6 years. Every employee has been carefully vetted. We have a reputation, clients, contracts. I can't risk all of that." "So you're choosing your team over family." Mark's voice took on a steely edge. "I'm not making any choice," Olivia countered. "You're giving an ultimatum. I'm suggesting we separate personal and professional." Mark abruptly stood up. "You just don't understand how important family is. My relatives are in a difficult situation right now. Victor lost his job. Aunt Rose has problems with her market stall rent. Amy was expelled. They need support, and I'm ready to support them." Olivia also stood. "But not like this. Perhaps I can help them find jobs that match their actual qualifications, or temporarily support them financially." "They don't need charity." Mark cut her off. "They need decent work, and you're part of the family now and should share our values." A heavy silence hung in the office. Olivia looked at her husband and didn't recognize him. Where was the attentive, understanding man who admired her independence and business acumen? Before her stood a man demanding she sacrifice everything she had built for some abstract family values. "I need to think," she finally said. This is a serious decision that affects the fate of many people. Of course, think about it. Mark softened, apparently deciding victory was near, but not too long. The relatives are waiting. When the door closed behind him, Olivia sank into her chair and covered her face with her hands. She was trembling. For the first time since they met, she wondered if she even knew this man. How could she have failed to notice such serious discrepancies in values? The next few days passed in tense silence. At home, Mark remained distant, like an offended child. At work, Olivia caught worried glances from colleagues. Her mood was clearly noticeable. "Has something happened?" Marina cautiously asked when they were alone after a meeting. "You haven't been yourself lately?" Olivia hesitated. Marina wasn't just a colleague. Over the years, they had become friends. Yet, talking about personal problems at work seemed unprofessional. "Just tired after vacation," she tried to joke. "You know how it is. Relaxing can be more exhausting than working." Marina nodded, though it was clear she didn't believe her. That evening, when Olivia returned home, Mark was sitting in the living room with his laptop. He looked focused and didn't even lift his head when she entered. "Hi," she said, taking off her coat. "How was your day?" "Fine," he replied curtly, not looking up from the screen. "And have you thought about my proposal?" Olivia sighed. All these days, she had indeed been thinking, but not about how to fulfill her husband's demands, but about what to do with this sudden crisis in their relationship. "Mark, let's talk." She sat opposite him. "I understand your desire to help your relatives. That's commendable. But what you're suggesting is wrong, from every point of view." Mark finally looked up from his laptop. "What exactly is wrong wanting to help family?" "Not in wanting to help, but in the way," Olivia patiently explained. "I can't fire qualified specialists to employ people without relevant skills. That would hurt the business, damage my reputation, and it's unfair to the employees who have invested years of effort into developing the company." "So that's it." Mark slammed his laptop shut. "So your reputation is more important than the well-being of our family?" "Don't twist my words." Olivia was starting to lose patience. "I'm talking about professional ethics, about a business that feeds us, including you and me. And I have an alternative proposal." Mark skeptically raised an eyebrow. "What then?" "My Uncle Peter is looking for workers for his farm in rural Illinois." Olivia tried to sound enthusiastic. "Physical labor, fresh air, a decent salary. Seasonal work from May to October. I spoke with him today. He's willing to hire up to 15 people. It's an excellent opportunity for your relatives to earn money and prove themselves." Mark's face lengthened. He looked at her with such astonishment, as if she had suggested his relatives move to Mars. "Are you serious?" he finally managed to say. "You're suggesting my Aunt Rose, who's 58, go to some village to farm." "Not to farm, but to work on a modern farm," Olivia calmly corrected. "There are many different tasks, from administrative to logistics, and age is no barrier here. Many city dwellers dream of such an opportunity: fresh air, ecologically clean products, a measured pace of life. My relatives are city people." Mark began to get agitated. "They're used to a certain standard of living, to civilization. You know, office work suits them better." "What about qualifications, experience, knowledge?" Olivia didn't give up. "They're not suitable for the positions you chose for them. But on the farm, they can start from scratch, gradually learning new skills. You just don't want to help them." Mark stood up, his face reddening. "You call yourself part of the family, but in reality, you refuse to support us in a difficult moment." "I'm offering real help," Olivia exclaimed. "Work with decent pay, housing, food. What's wrong with that?" "Everything," Mark roared. "You want to send my relatives to the backwoods to toil for your uncle, instead of giving them decent jobs in your agency." This is insulting." He grabbed his laptop and stormed out of the room, slamming the door. Olivia remained sitting in the living room, trying to make sense of what had happened. How could a conversation about helping relatives so quickly turn into a scandal, and why was working on a farm considered something shameful and unskilled office work prestigious? For the first time since the wedding, she wondered if she had made a mistake by rushing into marriage. The morning was overcast, as if mirroring Olivia's mood. She woke up in an empty bed. Mark had not returned home all night. Not a call, not a message. She had tossed and turned all night, pondering the situation, and by morning, she felt completely broken. After a shower and a strong coffee, Olivia got ready for work. Today was an important meeting with BTCom representatives, the contract the agency had dreamed of for so long. She needed to focus, to put personal problems aside. On her way to the office, she dialed Mark's number. After the fifth ring, voicemail picked up. "Mark, we need to talk," she said after the beep. "Please call me back." The office greeted her with its usual business bustle. Employees leaned over monitors. A meeting of the analytical department was underway in the conference room, and the aroma of fresh coffee wafted from the kitchen. Marina intercepted her at the elevator. "Got a minute? Need to discuss something before the BTCom meeting." They went into Olivia's office. Marina spread documents on the table. "I've prepared the final version of the presentation and the commercial proposal. Alex finalized the website prototype as the client requested. David completed the target audience analysis. The results are better than expected." Olivia reviewed the materials. The team, as always, had performed flawlessly. Every person in the agency was in their place, each making an important contribution to the common cause. "Excellent," she nodded. "I think BTCom will be pleased. The meeting's at 2 p.m., right?" "Yes, in the conference room on the 18th floor," Marina confirmed. They asked to hold the meeting at their location. "Sensible. We'll be ready." Olivia made notes in her planner. Marina hesitated before leaving. "Olivia, maybe it's none of my business, but is everything okay? You seem tense these past few days." Olivia looked up from her documents. Marina wasn't just a colleague. Over the years, they had become close friends. "Just some minor family issues," she admitted. "Nothing serious. If you need help or just to vent, I'm always here," Marina offered sincerely. "Thanks." Olivia smiled gratefully. "For now, let's focus on BTCom. That's more important." After Marina left, Olivia checked her email, responded to several important messages, and immersed herself in preparing for the meeting. Work had always been her salvation. When you're completely focused on a task, personal problems recede into the background. Around 11 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Natasha, the young secretary, peered into the office with a frightened look. "Ms. Matthews, there's a visitor for you. She's very insistent and says she won't leave until she sees you." "Who is it?" Olivia frowned. She had no scheduled meetings at this time. She introduced herself as Mrs. Susan Campbell. Natasha's voice trembled. "Your mother-in-law, I think." Olivia felt her insides clench. "Just what I needed, right before an important meeting. Show her in," she said, mentally preparing for an unpleasant conversation. Natasha nodded and disappeared behind the door. A minute later, Mrs. Susan literally stormed into the office. She was dressed with an attempt at elegance, an expensive coat, obviously new, massive jewelry, elaborate makeup. Behind her, a worried Natasha hovered. "Shall I get coffee?" she asked timidly. "No need, Mrs." Susan snapped, not letting Olivia open her mouth. "This is not a social visit." Natasha looked questioningly at Olivia, who nodded, dismissing the secretary. "Good morning, Mrs. Campbell." Olivia stood up from her desk, maintaining outward calm. "To what do I owe this visit?" "You can stop playing the businesswoman with me." Her mother-in-law threw a bulky bag onto a chair and remained standing, towering over Olivia, who was seated. "I'm here to talk about my son and your outrageous behavior." Olivia took a deep breath, forcing herself to maintain professionalism. "Mrs. Campbell, please, let's sit down and calmly discuss whatever is bothering you." "There's nothing to discuss here." "Mrs. Susan's voice rose. "You're breaking my son's heart with your selfishness and arrogance. Mark didn't sleep all night, worrying, and it's all because of your stubbornness and haughtiness." "Mrs. Campbell." Olivia tried to speak calmly. "I understand your concern for your son, but what's happening between Mark and me are our family matters, which we should resolve ourselves." "Nonsense!" Her mother-in-law waved her off. "Family is all of us, and when you refuse to help your husband's relatives, you betray not only Mark, but all of us." The office was becoming stuffy. Mrs. Susan's voice echoed off the walls, and Olivia was sure it could be heard in the hallway and neighboring offices. "I'm not refusing to help," Olivia patiently explained. "I offered a real alternative work on my uncle's farm with good pay and conditions." "On a farm?" Mrs. Susan threw up her hands. "You're suggesting intelligent people dig and manure. That's an insult. A modern farm is a high-tech enterprise." Olivia began to lose patience. "There's no manure involved. It's honest work with decent pay." "Then why don't you go work there yourself?" "If it's so wonderful," her mother-in-law asked venomously. "Why do you choose the countryside for our family, but an office in the city center for yourself, expensive suits, secretaries?" Olivia slowly stood up, feeling she could no longer sit under this pressure. "Because I built this business for 6 years, because I have an education and experience in this field, and because I don't demand from others what I wouldn't do myself." "Oh, really?" Mrs. Susan's voice rose even higher. "So we're not educated enough, not good enough for your elite company." The office door creaked open, revealing Marina's worried face. "Is everything all right?" she cautiously asked. "No," Mrs. Susan snapped, turning towards the door. "Nothing is all right. Your boss is a heartless careerist who puts her business above family." Marina blinked, stunned, unsure how to react to such a tirade. "It's all right, Marina," Olivia said firmly. "We're just having an emotional family discussion." Marina nodded understandingly and closed the door. Olivia turned back to her mother-in-law. "Mrs. Campbell, I beg you, let's talk calmly, without shouting or accusations. I genuinely want to help, but I cannot fire qualified employees without reason." "You don't need to fire them." Her mother-in-law suddenly changed tactics. "Just find additional positions, expand the staff." "That's a pointless expense." Olivia shook her head. "You can't create positions without real necessity. It will undermine the company's finances." "But what about my niece? Amy?" Mrs. Susan switched to a more poignant tone. "The girl just went through being expelled. She needs support, faith in herself. Can't you find any position for her? Amy was expelled for systematic truancy." Olivia reminded. "How can I entrust her with client work if she couldn't even manage attending classes?" Mrs. Susan's face turned red with anger. "You're just making excuses. Admit it honestly. You think we're not worthy of your precious business. That you're better than us, smarter, more successful." "I never said anything like that." Olivia started raising her voice. "You're twisting my words." "Ungrateful." Mrs. Susan stepped closer. "My son married you, brought you into our family, and you refused to help in a difficult moment." "I offered real help," Olivia exclaimed. "But you don't want to accept it because it doesn't fit your ideas of prestige. Selfish, heartless careerist." Mrs. Susan's voice rose to a scream. "I knew you weren't worthy of my Mark." The screams echoed throughout the floor. Olivia noticed employees gathering in the hallway, drawn by the noise. This was crossing all lines. A family conflict was one thing, a public scandal in her office was quite another. "Mrs. Campbell, I ask you to leave my office." Olivia tried to speak firmly and calmly. "We can continue this conversation at another time, in another place." "Don't tell me what to do." Her mother-in-law waved her hands. "I won't leave until you agree to help my family. My Victor, Rose, little Amy." She came so close that Olivia could feel her breath. Mrs. Susan's eyes burned with righteous indignation. Suddenly, she swung her arm, as if intending to grab Olivia's hair. Olivia instinctively jumped aside. Mrs. Susan, losing her balance from her sudden movement, staggered and, unable to keep her heels, began to fall directly onto the massive multifunction device, a printer, scanner, and copier all in one. Her mother-in-law crashed onto it, face down, directly onto the scanner's glass surface. "Oh," Olivia could only gasp, rushing to help. Mrs. Susan lay on the scanner, trying to get up, her face pressed against the glass, her cheek flattened, her nose squashed. "Wait, I'll help you." Olivia tried to support her mother-in-law by the shoulders. In an attempt to regain her balance, she accidentally brushed against the device's control panel, a characteristic whirring sound, then scanning. The bright light of the lamp illuminated Mrs. Susan's face, which was still trying to peel itself off the glass. "What's happening, Mrs. Susan cried out in fright. "Turn this thing off!" Olivia frantically pressed buttons, trying to stop the process, but only made things worse. The device switched to print mode. A few seconds later, a sheet of paper with a scanned image slid out of the tray. Meanwhile, Mrs. Susan managed to straighten up. She smoothed her rumpled jacket, fixed her hair, and, breathing heavily, glared at Olivia. You did this on purpose. You pushed me." "I just stepped back when you—" Olivia stopped herself, not wanting to accuse her mother-in-law of attempted physical aggression. It was an accident. At that moment, Marina, drawn by the noise, peered into the office. "Ms. Matthews, is everything all right?" Her gaze fell on the sheet emerging from the printer. She automatically picked it up and froze, staring at the image. The photo captured Mrs. Susan's face, flattened against the glass, with a distorted mouth and bulging eyes. Her nose was spread flat, her cheeks deformed beyond recognition. Her hair, so recently styled in a neat coiffure, was disheveled in chaotic disarray. The expression on the picture was as if her mother-in-law had been run over by a steamroller. Marina made a strange sound, something between a cough and a stifled giggle. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand, but it was too late. Mrs. Susan noticed her reaction. "What's that? Give it here." She snatched the sheet from Marina's hands and stared at her scanned face. For a second, there was absolute silence in the office. Then her mother-in-law let out a piercing shriek. You! She was choking with rage. "You did this on purpose. You humiliated me, disgraced me." "Mrs. and Campbell, it's an accident." Olivia tried to calm the enraged woman. "No one wanted to humiliate you." "Liar!" Her mother-in-law shrieked. "I understand everything. This was your plan to lure me here and make a mockery of me in front of your subordinates." Outside the office, a sizable crowd of employees had gathered, drawn by the shouts. Mrs. Susan noticed them and grew even redder. "Are you all staring, enjoying the show?" She turned to them. "Your boss is a monster. She's tormenting her husband's mother." The employees exchanged embarrassed glances, unsure how to react to this scene. Olivia felt her cheeks burn with shame. All her authority, built over years of professional work, was crumbling before her eyes because of a ridiculous family scene. "Mrs. Campbell," she tried one last time. Let's calm down and discuss everything like adults. I've had enough. Her mother-in-law crumpled the ill-fated photograph and threw it on the floor. You'll regret this, Olivia. My son will find out how you treat his mother. She grabbed her bag and resolutely headed for the exit, pushing past the employees crowded in the doorway. Get out of the way. Let me pass. Her mother-in-law pushed through the crowd. Remember this day. Soon, everything will change here. With those words, she disappeared into the hallway, still shouting angrily. A minute later, the office door slammed shut. Mrs. Susan had left the building. Silence fell in Olivia's office. Employees gradually dispersed, whispering about what they had witnessed. Only Marina and Julia remained, looking at their boss with worry and sympathy. Perhaps some tea, Julia suggested hesitantly. With brandy, Olivia smiled faintly. Thanks, but we have a meeting with BT.com in 2 hours. I need to pull myself together. I can cancel the meeting, Marina offered. I'll say unforeseen circumstances arose. No, Olivia said firmly. We won't change our plans because of this incident. Business must go on. When her colleagues left, Olivia sank into her chair and closed her eyes. A hurricane of emotions raged within her: shame, anger, bewilderment. How could her life have so quickly turned into a surreal nightmare just a month ago? She was a happy bride, in love with a wonderful man. Now, her gaze fell on the crumpled sheet of paper her mother-in-law had thrown. Olivia picked it up, smoothed it out, and carefully examined the ridiculous portrait of Mrs. Susan. In another situation, it might have seemed amusing. The distorted face, bulging eyes, distorted mouth, disheveled hair. It looked absurd, grotesque, almost a caricature, but at the same time, there was something strangely truthful in this distortion, as if the woman's inner qualities, usually hidden behind a mask of propriety, had suddenly manifested. Olivia smiled. The most honest portrait of a person is the one you get by accident, when there's no time to put on a mask, build defenses, create the right impression. She carefully folded the photograph and put it in her desk drawer. This picture became a kind of talisman for her, a reminder not to succumb to manipulation and sacrifice her principles for the sake of imaginary family well-being. Her phone vibrated, a message from Uncle Peter. Hey, niece, how are you doing if you decide you need a break from the city bustle? Come visit, fresh air and no scandals. Olivia smiled. Maybe it wasn't such a bad idea to spend the weekend on the farm, away from office worries and memories of a failed marriage. Thanks, Uncle Peter, she replied. I think I'll come this weekend. I really need a break. She walked to the window and looked out at the evening city. Life goes on. Her agency is thriving. The team is supportive. New projects, new opportunities, new horizons lie ahead, and her personal life. Well, maybe someday she will meet a man who will appreciate her not despite, but because of her strength, independence, and dedication to her work. And for now, she has a job she loves, people who respect her, and the freedom to be herself. And that's already a lot. Olivia raised her glass, taking the last sip of wine. To new beginnings, she whispered, looking at the first stars appearing in the evening sky. And somewhere deep inside, she knew everything would be all right, because she had made the right choice. She chose herself, her principles, and her dignity. And that was worth more than any relationship built on manipulation and blackmail. Her phone vibrated again, this time with a message from Marina. How are you? Maybe we should celebrate your freedom. The girls and I are meeting at the Barrel tomorrow. Want to join? Absolutely, Olivia replied. And this weekend, I'm going to Uncle's farm to clear my head. Great plan. The reply came. Get some rest, and we'll hold down the fort. Olivia smiled. She truly had an amazing team, not just employees, but true friends, ready to support her in difficult times. She took one last look at the evening city and headed to the bedroom. Tomorrow would be a new day. The first day of her new life, a life without John, without his demanding family, without compromises that demeaned and devalued. And for some reason, this prospect didn't scare her. It inspired her, as if a new chapter was opening, a blank page on which she herself would write her story, the story of a strong woman who wasn't afraid to stand up for her principles and choose freedom instead of family happiness built on manipulation and control.